Welcome to the Wordsmith Forge Christian Fiction Podcast. This is where you meet the Christian fiction authors who write the books you want and ought to read. I'm excited today to talk with author James L. Rubart. He's been writing now for quite a while, and I think, what do you have, Jim, 8 books?
Well, I have 10 books that I've done solo, and then another 6 I co-authored, so I guess 16 total at this point.
You've been busy. Yeah. So that's my brief introduction of Jim. I'd like him to introduce himself and let us know what he's all about.
Yeah, so my official bio says I'm 28 years old, trapped inside an older man's body, and that's probably pretty accurate. I still like to water ski. I go dirt biking with my sons. I hike with them. I play pickleball. So I'm very active and enjoy the outdoors a lot, and I do love to write. And what else would you like to know about me, Mike?
Well, one thing you mentioned, you enjoy the outdoors. Yeah. In God's creation, what is there within, say, 15 or 20 minutes of you that you like to go and kind of maybe restore your soul, or that you just appreciate? Where you live, I believe you're on the western side of Washington?
We're actually in the eastern side of Washington. Yeah, we're in the eastern side of Washington, and I'll tell you something that I did this last summer that was unbelievably restorative to my soul. Myself and 3 buddies, we got in kayaks and we did a 70-mile kayak trip up Lake Chelan. And if you're not familiar with Lake Chelan, it is
to Stehekin.
To Stehekin, yes. We kayaked up to Stehekin and back, and people just looking at it like, "Are you guys nuts?" But it was the adventure, that we wanted to go on, and had an absolutely spectacular time.
Boy, that is amazing. I was in Stehekin this summer.
Oh, you were? Okay. Yeah.
But I hate to tell you, I didn't paddle. I climbed in a helicopter.
Oh, my gosh, Mike. Good for you.
Flew up there. That's a whole nother story. We don't want to get into that right now. But that is beautiful country. I've been to Stehekin. I've been to Stehekin on 2 different occasions.
Okay, so you know how stunning that lake is, and the mountains that come right down to the water, and
it is. I may give I'll give our audience a couple shots of Stehekin when I do the editing of this, so they can see from the air.
I love that. So,
tell us, Jim, how did you get into writing books?
Yeah, it all started a long time ago. I was 11 years old, and my mom got my sister and I the Chronicles of Narnia for Christmas, and I read those and just devoured them, loved them. Just, oh my gosh, to be captured and taken into this other world. And that's when the seed was born. I just thought, someday I want to try to do for others what C.S. Lewis did for me. Yeah. So I had that dream for a long, long time, and I was scared of pursuing the dream until the year 2000, and my wife one day announced she was going on a fast, and I said, "What for?" And she said, "I don't know." And I said, "How long are you going to do it?" "Till I get the answer," is how she responded. And I said, "Okay." And after 24 hours, I said, "So did you get your answer?" "Nope." "What's the question?" "I don't know." "How long are you going to do it?" "Until I get the answer." And halfway through day 3, the Spirit just spoke to me and said, "Jim, I have designed you to be a novelist. When are you going to step into your destiny?" And I turned to her in the car and I said, "Honey, I know why you're fasting. I'm supposed to be a novelist." And she turns to me and she says, "Wait a minute. I'm hungry for 3 days and you get the answer." But that, Mike, that was the catalyst. That's the thing that made me go, "Wow, I have to step through this fear and step into it." And that's when I really got serious about it and started writing.
So there was a lot of doubt.
A lot of doubt. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of doubt. Because when I was a kid, I must have been 8th grade, I took journalism class, and they chose, out of the journalism class, they chose the people to be on the paper the next year in 9th grade. And I wasn't chosen. And I believed the lie that, well, you can't write. You don't have the ability. You have the desire, but there's no ability there. And so that was the voice I listened to for a lot of years. So if anybody is listening to this and saying, you know what, I can't cook, I can't start that restaurant, or I can't, whatever it is, I'm here to tell you, do not listen to that lie. Step into who God has made you to be.
Yeah, that's fantastic. As we were talking a little bit before we started the recording, people are stymied by what they perceive. I'm not good enough. People will laugh at me. The worst thing we can do is listen to that self-doubt, and it talks to us all the time. Good that you're able to overcome that, and my goodness, once the floodgates opened, here it came. Of the books you've written, are there any that kind of stand out, saying young boy needs to understand as he's growing up?
I'm a believer that, let me put it this way. All of us are looking for identity, and all of us are looking for freedom. Yes. At our core, our deepest desires, and certainly a young man who is trying to figure that out with all the things coming at him. And I think that, and I taught this for a number of years, for many years, I taught this to authors. I said everyone has a theme of their life, and we need to discover what the theme of our life is. And I took them through this exercise. I told people, if you tell me your 3 favorite movies, I can tell you the theme of your life. And when I do that for myself, the theme I come up with is reflected in my books. Every one of my books has the same thing. And I've done this with authors for years. And again and again and again, the theme doesn't matter what the story is. The same theme recurs because that's who we are at our core. Even if they don't know what the theme of their life is, it comes out in their books. And so really the theme of my life is freedom and identity. And so all of my books have that in there, is discovering your destiny, discovering your identity, stepping into that, and the freedom that comes with that. So I would say probably all of my books are applicable to young men who are trying to do that, and it's not something that parents know how to teach, right? And so the broad stroke is I think all of my books could speak to that in young men.
I can understand that, and I like how you put that in themes, and of course I internalize that, and I think, so that's why I'm struggling with my 3rd book. Because I've taken something that I think would be a good idea, and I've started it 4 or 5 times. Now, I haven't let go of it. I think God keeps putting it back in my head. But I've written 2 books, and I can, although they're vastly different, there's still the same theme there. Okay. So there you go. So tell us a little bit about Rooms.
Yeah, that was the one that started it all. So really, Rooms is the story of this young software executive that inherits this home down on the Oregon coast that turns out to be a physical manifestation of his soul. And so he is walking into all these rooms that are actually part of his soul. And I came up with that idea because when I was a young man, I read this little pamphlet, My Heart, Christ's Home, where when you invite Jesus into your heart, in this pamphlet he goes to all these different rooms of your heart. And I always thought, oh my gosh, if you took that concept and blew it up and expanded it, you could have a really powerful story. So that's where the idea came from. And after my wife had done the fasting, I was praying, and I had a number of other ideas, and I was just praying and going, which story should I pursue? And felt like that was the one to go after. So
could you give us an idea of some of the different rooms in a person's heart?
I think there's a couple rooms come to mind. One of them is a memory room, where we have all these memories, and some of them are not great memories that we have to face. And I believe the Holy Spirit wants to bring healing to our past and healing to our memories. But you got to step into potentially some pretty painful, access some pretty painful memories to be able to do that. Yeah. So one room is the memory room. Another room is the music room, where my character used to play music, and it used to be the way he expressed himself and really accessed the glory of God. It was through his music, but he put it down. And so he discovers this room, right, where all these amazing guitars, and you're a guitar player, I'm a guitar player. So he could access that. And then there's a room in the house that I don't want to talk about because I don't want to spoil anything, but right. Kind of some. I'll just say there's some other mind-blowing rooms within the house, because since this is playing with imagination, I could create any kind of room I wanted in the house. And there's a room that he finds that I'll just say points him to his destiny, his identity, and what he should be pursuing. So,
and what little I know about the book, the man Micah Taylor could say, I got it all. What do I need?
Yeah.
What do I need with God?
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds very powerful.
Yeah, that's as I say. He had he had pushed his faith so far back on the stove, had fallen off. And I think there's a lot of people there. And this character rediscovers his heritage, I guess you could say. But he comes to a point in life where he says, "All right, I'm willing to explore this." And so what I did, Mike, is I just took all my favorite stories and films and my own stuff and just mixed them together. So, now it came Rooms.
Will Rooms remain your favorite, or do you have others, or is it like your children?
It's like your children. It's like your children. Rooms is, a favorite since it was my first one, and I love that book. But I love all my books in different ways. Yeah, it's fun to look back and go, I'm proud of all of them. There's not any one of them where I go, that really didn't work. For me, I went with Toni Morrison's advice, where she said, if there is a story that you want to read and it has not been written yet, you got to go write that story. And so I would say all of my stories are stories I wish had been out there, so I could read them, fresh the first time. Yeah.
I've got a review here that I'd like to read. Customers find the book compelling and engaging from the start. They describe the story as powerful and poignant, describing it as an inspiring tale that touches their hearts. The writing is thought-provoking and gripping, with descriptions that engage the imagination. Readers mention the emotional depth and intense moments that make them search their own souls. The characters are believable and working through issues. The book encourages healing and freedom through forgiveness and second chances. I thought that said a lot. You could almost think that if a reader was searching for emotional depth, that by reading Rooms they could search themselves.
That's well said. That's well said, Mike. Yeah, you're exactly right. And the greatest satisfaction as an author is getting an email from a reader that says, "Oh my gosh, this is what your book did for me," because that's ultimately that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to express some ideas and thoughts, and you hope it can set people free. That's as an author, I want to set people free. So
probably definitely more than monetary value. It's when they know that they've connected with another individual. It means the world.
Yeah, it does.
I have a list of questions here. How do you balance your writing with your experiences? And how do you balance your writing with other activities? You're a very active person, but yet...
Contract deadline is a good motivator to to write, definitely. and so it's just a matter of scheduling days where you go, I've got this block and I have to write. And it's interesting because a lot of people say, well, I want to write. I want to write a book, and when the inspiration comes, I'm going to write. And you can't do that. You have to sit down and you have to write. And the reality is, and you've experienced this, Mike, because you've done 2 books. A lot of times you'll sit down and you'll think nothing is there. It just isn't happening. But you press through, and 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, it's like, oh, it starts to flow again. So you have to have, there is a definite discipline, and there is a definite mindset if you want to write. And that is, you know what? I just heard this stat the other day, and I'm going to assume it's true, that the average person has 34 hours of TV a week. And you go, oh my goodness. What if you took just 10%? And you wrote for 3 hours a week? You could get a lot accomplished in 3 hours a week. So it's making the choices. It's choosing to do, I'll say it's choosing to do the thing that's going to last, certainly for this life and maybe for eternity, rather than the fleeting. And I'm not saying Netflix and TV shows are bad. I'm just saying, if this is important enough, you do it first. Yeah.
Anyone can become an author, but it takes skill and dedication to be a writer. You've already given aspiring authors some good advice, and some other authors some good advice. Writers can learn from it as well. Do you have any funny or surprising moments from your publishing process?
Publishing process, or something that happened to me within my journey?
I'll let you decide.
Okay, well, I'll tell you a story. This is the first one that popped into my mind. So I'll tell you the story. My 3rd book had come out, and there's an organization called ACFW, American Christian Fiction Writers. And I was at the annual conference, and every year they pick books of the year. And I'd been nominated for the 3rd time for one of the awards. And after the gala was over, after the whole presentation award ceremony was over, and once again I had not won, I thought I was the only one in the room. And as I was walking out, I said out loud, I said, wow, what do I have to do to win one of these things? And the sound man, who is a friend of mine, was up in the booth, and I didn't see him. And without missing a beat, he says, write a better book. I just thought, one of the funniest moments. It was great. It was so funny. So
yeah. Oh, what are you going to work on next?
I'm not sure what I'm going to work on next. I'll tell you what's mulling around in my brain is I have a number of short stories, and I've never written short stories. I actually have one done that was a partial inspiration for Rooms. So I'm going to work on finishing up that short stories, but I'm thinking about coming up with a collection of short stories. And then the other project that is a potential is I have a good friend of mine who has invited me to collaborate on a book. So I'm considering working with him on a book that would be different from anything I've ever done, and would be really exciting because he's also a master novelist instructor and teacher. And I'm not going to say his name because you probably would know it and a lot of your listeners would know it. I'm just going to leave it at that. But just enough to say that I learned, oh my gosh, I have all these books and I learned to write from this guy. So the idea of me writing with him is pretty exciting. So those are kind of the two things that are on the forefront of my mind right now.
You do have a website?
I have a website, and people can email me from the website, and you can buy my books on Amazon. That's probably the easiest place because they are the 900-pound. No, they're the 1,200-pound gorilla these days in terms of book sales. And so reach me through my website. And if people want to email me directly, I'm happy to chat with them that way too. And that email address is james@jameslrubart RUBART.com. So that's another good way. Then. Mike, there's something I would love to say to all your listeners.
Sure.
And we're going to kind of touch on something we already touched on before, but I'm going to repeat myself because I think it's so important. I have seen writer after writer after writer that is hesitant to step into their dreams. And one of the things my son and I did for 5 years, we had the Rubart Writing Academy, and we taught people how to do what I've done. And again and again and again, the biggest issue that the writers had was believing in themselves and stepping out and taking that leap of faith. And so this applies whether you're a writer, whether you want to take travel groups to Europe, whether you want to start that restaurant, whether you think, oh God, I've always wanted to hike the Camino, and you just don't think you can do it. I was there, and I never imagined in a million years that I'd end up in the Christie Hall of Fame. It's just kind of, it's still surreal for me to think that that has happened. And so I just want to say that anyone who has a dream, I don't care what the dream is, writing, cooking, travel, athletics, whatever it is, do it. Go for it. Because there's this amazing story that Jesus tells where this guy goes away and he says to one guy, I'm going to give you 10 grand. Another guy, he gives him 5 grand. Another guy gets $1,000. And he says, take care of that while I'm gone. And the first guy takes the 10 and he turns it into 20. Next guy takes the 5 grand, turns it into 10. The guy with 1,000, he just buries it in the ground, does nothing with it. And he comes back and he goes, way to go, number 1. Way to go, number 2. Number 3, what are you doing? Why didn't you could have at least put it in the bank and got some interest off of it? And what I've always found fascinating with that story is there's not a fourth guy. There's not a fourth guy that tried with his 2,500 and failed. And so what that tells me, or my interpretation of that is the only failure is not trying. The only failure is not trying. It's not about whether you make 20 or 10 and double it. It's, did you try with the gifts you have and the abilities you have? Because there's varying degrees of ability. Some people are just more talented. That's just the way it is. But with what you have been given, have you given it a shot? And I think at the end of the age, Jesus is going to go, wow, Jim, you lost the $2,500, but man, you gave it a good try. Way to go. Yeah. So anybody out there hesitating, try.
There's not a guy that said, well, you didn't give me anything. We all have something.
Great point.
And so I think that's a great analogy and a great reminder that God has given us life. He's given us fellowship, the need to be with other people in some way. And this has been a very, very uplifting discussion.
I'm so glad.
I so appreciate it. When this podcast is a tremendous success, we'll have you back, and you can say, well, Mike, it's because you were not afraid to be rejected.
Yeah.
You weren't afraid to use your old man voice and ask people questions.
Yeah, but see, this old man voice that you have, you critique it, and yet I hear it as comforting and warm and inviting. So, it's all perspective. Another saying I love, and I actually wrote a whole book about it, The Journey to Jake Palmer kind of embraces this idea. But years ago, a friend of mine said, it's impossible to read the label when you're standing inside the bottle. And we are all standing inside our own bottles.
The fear of rejection and being putting ourselves in a position of self-containment, containing ourselves in a bottle, as you speak.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, James. God bless you and your efforts and your continuing sharing your joy in the Lord with other people. I thank you for coming on this podcast.
Oh, Mike, thanks for inviting me. What the biggest takeaway for me is just making a new friend. So thank you.
Have a good day.
Okay. Are we?
Hopefully I don't lose you. Well, I really want to thank James for being with me today. I thought it was a very, very uplifting and encouraging interview that he gave us. He had a lot of good advice for us. I thought everything went well. This was the very first interview I'd ever done, and I kind of thought I was prepared, but we got down to the end, and it looked a little lame when James said it was great having a new friend. I wasn't expecting that, and it just caught me off guard, so that's why it was kind of lame there when I said, have a nice day. I mean, that was strange. I would have liked something a little bit more professional than that, but on the whole, I thought it was a very, very good interview. But I'm also happy that you were able to join us, and I hope you enjoyed the second episode of the Wordsmith Forge Christian Fiction Podcast. I'd like you to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button for me. Be sure to spread the news, share it with friends, help us keep the light on here. I think that the people I'm interviewing have a lot to offer. Christian fiction, it's a great way to help demonstrate the biblical principles found in the Bible. I hope you have a great day and come back and keep watching our episodes. This is Mike Baines, out.